The 42nd session of the Administrative Council of African Regional Intellectual Property, ARIPO, started yesterday. Yesterday we spoke to Ms. Salma Mbunda, the Acting Chief Executive Officer at the Business and Intellectual Property Authority, BIPA, as well as Director General of ARIPO, Mr. Fernando dos Santos. They spoke to us about the background of ARIPO and its functions, as well as where it slots in with BIPA. Today, I'm joined by Ms. Aina Kaundu, the Executive for Intellectual Property at BIPA, as well as Mr. Chikumbutso Namelo, the Chairman of the Administrative Council of the African Regional Intellectual Property Organization. Good morning and welcome to Good Morning Namibia.
Good morning.
Ma'am, let's please start with you. Briefly talk to us about the importance of intellectual property and why it's important particularly to protect our intellectual property.
Well, the rationale behind protecting intellectual property is really to reward the investment that someone puts into developing, whether it is a process or it's a product that is beneficial for the society. It is also a system that rewards someone that creates something for the benefit of our communities, such as those that write books, those that sing songs, those that perform. So intellectual property is really there to ensure that people are innovative and creative, but also to be able to say, hey, you can share with us your innovation and your creation, and we will protect it, because intellectual property is not like a chair. You know, a chair, once I sit on it, you can sit on it. But a book, we can everyone can access it at the same time. So we need a system like intellectual property to just protect our innovators and creators.
You know, we love basics, and it's important that we get back to the basics. Not all of us understand what the difference is between a trademark and a patent, for example. You spoke about books. So if I write the book and it's really, truly, authentically my invention, what is that? How does it relate to a trademark or to a patent, and which is which?
If you write a book, the moment that you just write it down, or the moment you write down a song, you have copyright in it. In fact, the law says that you don't need a registration for that. We facilitate registration in order just to assist with evidence as a mode of proof. But otherwise, the moment that you have written something down, it becomes your creation and you are entitled to copyright. That means you are the only one that has the right to give other people the right to copy, the right to sell, and so forth.
I don't want to belabor this point because we don't have that much time, but I would like to know, say for instance, you've written that song, you've written that book, and I infringe on that right. What rights do you have to recourse?
Well, you can approach the court of law, and you can get a compensation for any loss, and every time you have written something, even if someone else uses it, they must attribute, they must acknowledge that this is your piece of work.
Very well. Sir, we don't only think locally, we also think in terms of the African continent and globally, but please talk to us about the importance of intellectual property as far as the African context is concerned.
Thank you very much for having me again. You know, Africa is on an agenda to innovate. Just a couple of weeks ago, there was a meeting of African heads of states in Malawi, and the topic of discussion was innovation. The world has moved on. We are in the knowledge economy, and if Africa is going to develop, it also needs to get on the innovation ship. So
that ship hasn't sailed yet.
Well, it's starting to sail slowly, and you know, the whole point of having the Africa Regional Intellectual Property Organization, and there's another organization called the Organization of Intellectual Property in Africa, OAPI, is to help African countries, you know, get on this boat, innovate, take advantage of the intellectual property system, put in place, you know, effective laws and policies that are going to drive innovation in our countries, so that we can get, you know, on this innovation boat, we can get our countries to participate in the knowledge economy. I'm
not going to say you jumped ship, but you got slightly ahead of us. You already touched on the functions and the work that ARIPO does. But can you elaborate on that, also including the work of its administrative council, please?
Thank you very much. As I believe, you know, colleagues who were here yesterday explained, the African Regional Organization, ARIPO, was formed, you know, with a view to help its member states develop their intellectual property systems. Within that, there are a lot of things, forging, harmonization of laws and policies, forging, common services in intellectual property, and so on and so forth. But the idea is to help member states of ARIPO to develop their intellectual property systems so that these can be useful or effective tools for economic growth and development of of the member states. Yes.
And this week is a milestone week, Ms. Kaundu. Please let you reflect on what happened yesterday during day one of the summit so far.
Day one, of course, we had the official opening, where we had the presence of our Deputy Minister, Honorable Lucia Ipumbu, and she just shared with the audience on the development of intellectual property in Namibia, where we are and where we are going. And of course, we also heard from the acting chief executive officer of BIPA, who also just highlighted what BIPA has been busy with in terms of intellectual property development, and also from the Director General of ARIPO, who also shared with us, I think the most important thing was really where we are in terms of the filings of intellectual property. And we were just happy to note that there's been an increase in the space of innovation, and we are seeing that through the filing of utility models, which is like a smaller patent. Sometimes these terminologies in intellectual property can be so confusing, but simply it's just a smaller patent. And then we also just started off looking at the report of Director General to look at what ARIPO has been doing in the year 2018 in terms of developing intellectual property in the member states.
Where are we at as far as Namibia is concerned?
Well, in terms of legal framework, I am happy to share that the Industrial Property Act of 2012 finally entered into force on the 1st of August. I mean, this law consolidates pieces of legislations that varies from 1973, 1921. So these are old pieces of legislations. But so those laws are now repealed and we consolidate. Now we have one legal instrument. And on top of that, our draft intellectual property policy was approved by Cabinet. We are just waiting for the normal processes. Soon we will be launching it. So in terms of legal framework, we are not where we were last year. In the copyright space, we just had consultations with stakeholders. We are looking at our act and we are reviewing it. So in the coming year, we are looking at having a bill in place.
Thank you. So we always enjoy the perspective of outsiders. What is your sense of where Namibia is at in terms of intellectual property, particularly as far as yesterday's deliberations are concerned?
I think Namibia is doing very well, as Ms. Kaundu has just elaborated. We are impressed that the Industrial Property Act has been passed, and that puts Namibia on a sure footing in terms of making sure that there's an effective law geared towards protecting intellectual property. But having a law is not enough, which is why, again, Ms. Kaundu is making reference to the policy. Sometimes we get stuck in having an effective piece of legislation. But for us to have an effective intellectual property system, we need to make sure that, our laws, our policies, strategies are all speaking together to make sure that we stimulate innovation in our countries. So I'm glad that the Industrial Property Act in Namibia has been passed. It's law now. And I'm also glad that Namibia is in the process of making sure that it puts in place an effective intellectual property policy.
Thank you very much. These are very exciting times, and we look forward to hearing more from you during the course of the week as the deliberations continue. Sure. Best of luck with that. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There you have it. Aina Kaundu, the Executive for Intellectual Property at BIPA, as well as Mr. Chikumbutso Namelo, the Chairman of the Administrative Council of the African Regional Intellectual Property Organization, ARIPO, talking to us about the importance of intellectual property, but also the conference that's currently underway in Windhoek. We're back after the brief break. Please stay tuned.